daily fantasy. His number too high, then I'm probably fading him. He been on the road, he gon' eat up my salary. I hit a buy, he gon' lie before lock. Play back to back, then I probably won't pick on the DFS bachelor, good as it gets. Build a few liners and hit me a leg. He had a good game, but it might be a trick. Log in the Slack so I know who to pick. Sharing our liners, we all gon' get rich. New to this game, you should come to the pad. You might want some cash and get a good laugh. DFS sports, we gon' run up a bag. He heard every game and it's making me mad. You buying your lineups, I think you a cheater. DFS bachelor, he the new leader. Yeah.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Bachelor Pad. I, of course, am your host of DFS Bachelor, and we're gonna go. And I'm joined by, of course, our League of Legends Supermind at League of Items on Twitter, Mike. We're gonna go over our Draftkings LCK League of Legends picks. It's the Korean League. It's a 3-game slate for technically it's late evening for April 3rd and morning for the East Coast everywhere April 4th. This was supposed to be a 6-game LCK LPL slate, right? But LPL postponed their games to the 20th to give some people time off due to the coronavirus, like a day of honor or something like that.
Like a day of remembrance.
Day of remembrance, yeah. So it's a 3-game LCK slate. We're going to go over everything. First things first, thank you for all your guys' support, all the new subscribers, the old ones who are watching. We really appreciate you all. Cheers to you. Really do appreciate it. We are day drinking on a Friday. You're damn right. I got to make a run to the grocery store. I'm already nervous. My son seems like he has a fever. Too much stress. But we do appreciate you. Thank you so much. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the team. Be sure to hit subscribe down below. Get access to all of our content. In the days where there's not going to be League of Legends, of course, I'll still have esports, NBA simulation videos when I can get to them up. There is a link for Draft Dashboard down below, our player pools. Even if I don't do an NBA video, my player pool is still set every day. We do have League of Legends cheat sheets, etc. up there, so you can try that for 30 days for $1 as well. And one thing I would like, if all of you, I will have a link to Mike's YouTube channel in the video description. If you guys could go over there, give him a follow, subscribe, a thumbs up. That would mean a lot to me. I would appreciate that. Let's show him some love.
Me too.
Yeah, let's just share him some love, sharing all of this knowledge. He's really taught me a lot about the game. I'm just kicking ass when I play. I'm having a great time every night playing this because I just know so much more now. So show him some love. Go over to his channel. Click that link. Subscribe to his channel. I would appreciate that as well. So now I'm done rambling. How you doing this morning, Mike?
Good. I stayed up for most of the LPL LCK slate last night because I had a lot of EDG, so I was feeling good. And then we got through the first game of the Invictus series, and they had barely any kills. I'm like, this is amazing. I've got a shot tonight. And then, of course, game 2 happens, and they had like 26 kills or something like that because Victory 5 doesn't know how to hold on to a lead. And then, yeah, I ended up losing probably 20% of what I put out there last night. But, that's a pretty good outcome. Like, as long as you're not losing 100%, you feel
right.
Good.
Well, and like we talked about, so you took the underdog. V5 was a heavy underdog.
Yeah, so
that strategy will pay off eventually. You're going to take losses when you're going for the top. That's just how DFS works.
Yeah, and I was looking at some of the lineups that were similar to mine. The ownership percentage for CLX, who is the mid laner for Victory 5, was around 5%, and that's significantly higher than you would think for an underdog of that size. And that just means that people were willing to pay down for CLX and use up a roster spot because they understand the upside.
Sure.
For having a mid laner in the support position is just so high.
Right.
Because in the first game, he went 3-1-2 in a loss, right? And they had a lead. So in that game, if that 3-1-2, if they ended up winning that game, the 3-1-2 is probably more like a 5-2-7 or something. And then you're looking at like a 30 or 40 point, probably a 25 to 35 point performance, and that's what we're looking for, because even if they end up losing the next 2 games, you figure he'll get between 50 to 60 DraftKings points, which is similar to some of the supports that went 2-0 last night.
Right.
So that's really the upside that we're looking for, and yeah, it didn't get there, but I'm still okay with the play.
Absolutely, me too. I think it's a great play. So it's only a 3-game slate, so this video should be a little bit quicker. I will just state off the top, the betting favorites as of right now, correct me if I'm wrong, are KT, HLE, and Genji. I believe that's correct. Those are the 3 favorites tonight. We're going to break it down game by game. There is some risk we should talk about with LCK because Korea is obviously very much so against gambling, right?
Yeah.
So they don't release their starting lineups early. We will know the starters for the first game before it starts. Unfortunately, there's no late swap. So there is some added value in having exposure to that first game just because you know for sure they're going to play, right?
Yeah. And I mean, for the past couple of years, whenever I look at stuff like this, well, whenever I'm playing DraftKings in Korea or uh, on a slate where there are teams that have substitutes, the ownership percentage of the players who do not have a sub on that team is going to be a little bit higher.
Right.
So if you're willing to take that risk, you are going to get a little bit of an ownership discount,
Right.
which is, it's relatively important.
Right.
So for KT, 3 of their players do not have a backup. So top and jungle have backups.
Right.
So they're going to be a little bit lower owned.
Well, and that's the first game as well, right?
Yeah.
So
So
we're
we
gonna
will
know.
know that information, but in general, you would
Right.
see lower ownership for that.
Right.
So APK, everybody has a substitute, so we will need to wait on that information. Sandbox Gaming, everybody has a substitute, so it's going to be a little riskier.
Right.
Hanwha Life, 3 of them have substitutes, or 2 of them have substitutes, but they're not really playing often.
Right.
So you can only really base it off of the most recent match.
Right. Although what was the team last they played? Life got benched for Kellen,
Yeah.
and he hadn't played in 2 months.
Yeah.
So it does happen. Yeah.
When did we got that information? That was Genji was
We got it
right?
before the match started. So I knew an hour beforehand that he had been subbed out.
Yeah. So
but it's also late at night. There's a lot of people asleep at that time.
Exactly.
I tried to send some of my people in the Slack chat, who I knew were playing live, like, hey, get him out of your lineup, and they just slept through it.
Yeah, that's why I think there is the value in looking for the players who don't have substitutes, is because if you're setting your lineups early and you're not going to stay up until like as late as possible for the off chance that you get some news,
right?
Then you want to avoid the players with subs,
right?
Because, well, for 2 reasons. So 1, they might not start at all,
right?
And then 2, they might get subbed out,
right,
during the match.
Right.
So even in a scenario where we do know who the substitutes are, or what players are starting on a given slate, the players who don't have subs are definitely a little higher equity.
Especially if you're playing an underdog, right, and they lose the first game, and then it's like, and then they want to switch it up to try to win, shit like that. So,
and even SKT or T1 does that. So one of the best teams in the world is willing to make changes during the middle of a series, like it happened last night with their jungler Cuz.
Right. Yeah, I think that was my worst lineup, the one that I had him in. That was the one that didn't cash. But that was my most contrarian one, where I picked the biggest underdog that I could fit in, and then so I expect it to lose. But if it goes off, it could be first, and I'm willing to lose a little bit to try to win a lot.
Sure.
So, all right, well, let's start with the first game. So the first game, 11 o'clock Pacific, so that's why technically it does start April 3rd. It'll say April 4th on the thumbnail. The beautiful thumbnail that my wonderful son, who is slightly feverish today, freaking me out. Oh, God, my ex-wife's going to, fly up from California. And
everybody panic.
She's going to go Carol Baskin on me. So, Carol Baskin. Anyway, so it's APK. They're on the blue side, right, on top, against KT. KT is the betting favorite right now. Did I see that correctly?
Yeah, they're definitely the favorites going into this match, and I think that the only reason why they're not larger favorites is because APK won their most recent match.
Right.
They
played on February 20th. APK beat KT 2-0 on February 20th. And we were talking about this before the show. Are these teams significantly different since February 20th? Is there anything?
So at this point, I think most teams do not have any rosters that are impacted by the coronavirus, because in the beginning, even when there were cases of coronavirus in Korea was still playing, and so some teams had up 1 or 2 players who couldn't play. Like in China, there have been entire teams that were quarantined.
Right.
So I think I think at this point we're getting normalized.
Like right now,
Um,
just for me on the slate, I think APK is my favorite underdog on the slate. Maybe maybe Dragon X. I know they're a good team, but APK is on the blue side,
yeah.
which it's beneficial, right? Does that affect APK being on the blue side? Does that affect a lot of people are going to want to stack the favorites with KT? Does that affect some of the scoring for the 80 carrier or the mid of KT with them not being able to draft first?
It depends on how the drafts go, which is which is me basically saying yes and no,
Right.
because there are specific champions in League of Legends that will force the team to play as more as a team.
Right.
So I used the analogy before of um having a pocket passer.
Sure.
Like if you have a pocket passer and they have 3 touchdowns, they will most likely be passing touchdowns. They're not like you might get one rushing touchdown or something, but for the most part, you're expecting him to get passing touchdowns if you roster him,
Right.
right? So if it's a random game where the pocket passer has 2 rushing touchdowns and you have a bunch of his wide receivers on your lineup, then you're not going to be able to have like the high upside that you're looking
Sure.
for when you roster them.
Sure.
So so that happens a lot uh in esports, and it's typically the 80 carry and the mid laner who are the quote unquote pocket passer, and
Right.
that's why we're so interested in having them on our lineup.
Mhm. Makes a ton of sense. So breaking down this game for you, who do you like? Uh, like for me, I'm looking at the ADC now. APK does have a sub trigger. I don't think he plays. I think Hybrid will be the guy. You're getting an $1,800 savings in the captain spot if you go the ADC from APK over aiming for KT.
Yeah, so on these kinds of slates, on 3 game slates, you're not really looking for value from different teams. The priority is to have the puzzle pieces that fit together.
Right.
So so when I'm looking at KT and APK, in general, I think KT is going to be a lower scoring team because of their play style. Uh, that makes me that makes me a little afraid to play KT. But at the same time, one thing that I've noticed over the past couple of years is that the losing team is really the team that dictates how the game gets played out.
Right.
Because like you can either have the mentality of I'm going to take a shot at it and just risk it and like try to make the comeback now, or you have the teams that like are willing to stall out the game and wait for a later point.
Right.
It's extreme. It's fundamentally different than traditional sports. Like in
Right.
traditional sports, you don't really have that option because you have a game clock. In League of Legends, there's no clock. Like a game could last theoretically 5 days.
Right.
It's I think the longest game was just over an hour or something like that in professional League of Legends. But theoretically, it could get out of control and last hours. Um, so yeah,
I'm
so
looking at I'm looking right now like I'm just kind of building a random sample lineup, just looking at it right here. If I did a 4-3 stack with APKs with hybrid in the captain spot, with their jungler mid and ADC, and then filled the other with HLE, who I think is a reasonable favorite. They dominated SB last time they played as well. You still
uh-huh.
have $4,300 left over.
Yeah, that wouldn't scare me at all. And
I think
if
that's a
you
great
wanted
lineup.
and if you wanted to run that out twice, you could do a couple of pivots so
Sure,
that you have a more unique lineup construction.
sure.
So then the thing I would say though is when I look at a slate, the first thing I do is look at the favorite and the potential lineup combinations for the favorite.
Right.
So if I look at my sheet, I I plug in KT and then I look for like 4-3 stacks with
Mm-hmm.
80 carries because that's obviously the one that we're most interested in.
Sure.
And the only team that you can 4-3 stack with is Dragon X.
Right.
So there's going to be a high correlation between well,
And
there
APK, you can literally 4-3 stack with any team.
yeah. So but what I was going to say about KT is the ownership for KT, I would expect almost all of the teams that have KT to include Dragon X.
Interesting. Interesting. So that's an interesting pivot. If you're playing KT, maybe you pivot to HLE or you take a shot on SB. I think SB the biggest underdog on the slate.
I think APK is the biggest underdog.
Oh well, I'm telling you right now, I'm rocking that biggest underdog. I'm rocking it. I love that they won the last time they played. They scored. They won 2-0. By the way, it wasn't just like they went out and won. They put a 2-0 win on it. That's looking really juicy to me. Am I crazy, or who do you like? Do you think KT wins the game, or do you think APK?
I think that KT should win. But it depends on if they can uh, dictate how the game is played.
Right.
So I'm not as familiar with APK and KT as I am with other teams.
Sure.
It's just that I know from like a historical perspective, KT has been a lot slower.
Gotcha.
So if you look at the players on their team, Tucson and Kuro are both veteran players that have been around for a very long time. I think Tucson is like a top 10 in terms of games played in the LCK.
Okay.
That stat was out there last night. So they have a wealth of experience, and that just means to me that if they are ahead and they want to play a low variance game, they can finish the game easily.
Right.
And if they're behind and they want to take it slow, they can take it slow easily.
Right.
So
and to boost up KT a little bit from what I was talking about, they did just recently in the last week beat HLE, who's a favorite on this slate, 2-0. And Tucson played great, 83.548 points. Huge game.
Yeah. So another thing to take into consideration is we've been playing 6-game slates with LCK and LPL.
Right.
So it's going to warp how people look at the slate.
Right.
And like what they're looking to do.
Right.
On a 3-game slate, it's even more important to have the team that wins 2-0.
Right.
Because you don't have 6 opportunities to find that team
right.
that puts up 3 good games,
Right.
So I do think that APK has a lower percent chance of 2-0ing
sure.
than KT, which is part of the reason why I expect KT to have much higher ownership.
Perfect. Anything else in this game that we need to cover?
Yeah, so I'll just give my favorite play from each one.
Oh, okay.
So I think if I'm playing a KT stack, I want hybrid over the mid laner, and if I'm playing KT, I would want aiming over Kuro, and that's my default position is AD carry over mid laner.
Sure, makes sense.
But yeah, for these teams, I think it makes sense. And then I would also say that since it's a 3-game slate, I would consider doing a 4-1-2, which would be a game stack with 4 players from one team, a carry from the other team, and then 2 players from one of the other matches.
Right. It's basically taking the AD carry as taking the highest upside you can afford right there as a one-off, essentially. Is what you're...
Yeah, and
right.
the reason for doing that is because if this series is the highest scoring series, and they play 3 close matches, then the mid laner and the AD carry are going to be the most likely to have one very good game,
right,
and still be like theoretically in the best lineup.
Right, makes a ton of sense. All right, let's go to our next game. SB and HLE. SB on the blue side. Just going back to that last game, is there a significant advantage for the underdog having the blue side? Like for me, when I'm looking at underdogs that I want to play and I think it's close, if they're on the blue side, I jump all over it. Am I crazy for doing that, or?
I think that it definitely increases their chance of winning one game. I don't think it increases their chances of winning one game, and it increases their chances of having more kills, I think.
Excellent.
But it doesn't increase their chances of winning 2 games in a set.
Gotcha. Perfect. That's good to know. Okay, so SB, HLE. Is HLE a heavy favorite in this? I feel like they are. I can't remember the numbers now.
So HLE, this is basically a 50-50. The line is actually swung.
Oh, wow.
So now SB is considered the favorite.
And they are more expensive on DraftKings. The players are.
Yeah.
So there's
So
that.
Sandbox. I'm
Sandbox,
not.
that's what it is. I'll call them Sandbox from now on. I
No,
should
it's
call them by their
cool.
name.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they're the favorites.
I know they played on February 15th and HLE won 2-0.
Yeah. So this is one. I mean, it's difficult to take a team hyping themselves up seriously, but Hanwha Life has called themselves the G2 of Korea, and
Right.
like G2 is the best team in Europe. So Hanwha Life thinks of themselves as playing a similar style to G2, and anybody who's watching the European playoffs right now realizes that G2 is a heavy kill team, and I don't really see that with uh with Hanwha Life, but that's what they're aspiring to be. So maybe they
Right.
can do something like that eventually, but it
Right.
hasn't happened yet.
Right.
I recognize a lot of these players from Hanwha Life, so that is a good thing. Let me take a look at their previous team. So what do you think about this matchup?
Well, we got SB on the blue side, and you just talked about it being a pick'em. But again, if I'm looking, so overall on this slate is there who is the team that feels like the lock to win the best chance I should say to win 2-0? Is it Gen G over Dragon X? Is it
No, it's
no?
definitely not that match.
Right,
That
that
match,
seems close, right? Those are two
yeah,
good teams.
yeah. Those are so the way that I would look at this is the first game is a good team versus a bad team, KT versus APK. The second matchup is two mediocre teams playing against each other, or maybe even two bad teams playing against each other.
Okay,
And then the third matchup is two good teams playing against each other.
right.
So in my mind,
It's
I would
tough.
want I would want exposure to Sandbox and Hanwha Life because they're both not good enough to like dominate the other team
Right.
from like
Like
a macro perspective. Like any team can dominate another team
sure,
with a lot
sure,
of kills.
of course.
It's much more difficult to dominate another team through like manipulating the map and playing slow and all that because it requires a lot higher level of skill and
Right,
patience and
right,
just macro understanding.
right. Makes a ton of sense. When I look at this, honestly, I think I'm gravitating towards the other games. There just aren't the kind of players in this game that seem to score a ton of points, just from a DFS perspective. Even when you look at their wins, it's, you know, like Route, the 80 carry for Sandbox. His high score in the last 10 games is 87. I can go and find 10 higher scores from 80 carries from APK. You know what I mean? So for
Yeah.
me, like just from an upside perspective, I just don't see it. I'm looking at Hanwei Lives right now, and even in their wins, he does have so the last time a player for Hanwei Life had a big game, it was Vista, and they were playing Sandbox, and he scored 121, and that was back
Yeah.
on February 15th. Every other game, even in their wins, he scored 28 in a win against Griffin. He scored
Yeah.
9 in a win against DRX. They actually beat DRX, which is shocking, right? That was an upset.
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing a ton of upside in this game for me. If we're going off, recent history, the last time they played, HLE had a huge game. Hanwei Gaming had a huge game. A lot of their players scored really well, but that was the last time they had a big game was against
Yeah.
this team.
So what I would say is everything that you just said, I think is accurate, but it's exactly why I want these players on my team.
There you go.
So
Exactly.
so one thing that I would make a comparison to is that League of Legends is not like traditional sports in the sense that players are not limited by physical ability.
Right.
So if you think about basketball, you have somebody like LeBron James. He's what 6'9", 270 pounds, more athletic than everybody on the court.
Right.
He has ability that other people just don't have.
Right.
He can run the court. He can run the court relatively fast. He can pass the ball, so he has triple double upside. He
Right.
can dunk on people.
Right.
He can shoot a three, even though it's really ugly to watch.
It is.
Um,
Can be.
so yeah, so in this environment in esports, everybody can be LeBron James. That's
Right.
that is the main difference. Or everybody can be James Harden. Everybody can be Giannis. Like
Right.
when you pick you're only limited by the champion that you pick.
Right.
So whenever somebody locks in a Aphelios or Senna, they are basically locking in LeBron James, and they have the upside to have a 10 kill game or something like that.
Right.
Like there I think that you're right that the match history does show either like a reluctance to play in a heavy kill matchup or something, but they're not incapable of playing a heavy kill matchup.
Right.
So I think especially when ownership is taken into consideration, I think that this is the most likely matchup to get overlooked, and I want a lot of exposure to Hanma Life specifically, but probably some exposure to both teams
Right.
because of the chance of it going off.
Sure.
Because they're very similarly talented teams. And I did look up Hanma Life. A couple of their players were on Griffin,
Okay.
and Griffin is the team. Just let me make sure I got this right.
Yeah, no problem. One thing I'm looking at, just looking at this game, HLE does not have a sub at the top position, while SB does. And interestingly enough, they just switched. Summit played over Lonely in the last game, and
Yeah,
that
so
had
they
been
go back and forth.
they go
have
back
been
and
going
forth.
back
So that leans me a little bit more towards Hanwei, just because I know he's gonna play. I would
Yeah.
that makes me. And this game starts at 1 a.m. my time, so 4 a.m. Eastern. You won't know most likely won't know the starters before the slate locks. So there's a lot less risk there. Same with the jungler. Sandbox has a substitute. HLE doesn't. Haru is the only jungler they have. They both have a sub for the for the AD carry position, but I don't think I'm targeting either of these teams really for their AD carry position. And when you go to support, HLE again does not have a sub while Sandbox does. So I think that can kind of help you shape your stacks, even though there's not a ton of it's not perfect for correlation. Of course, you'd like to have the mid ADC and jungler, right, correlated together.
Yeah.
But, if you're just kind of trying to get raw points, HLE, you don't have to worry about a sub at the support, the jungler, or the top position.
Yeah. So yeah,
That makes sense?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
So the other thing I would say for Hanma Life is the players that they have performed well on other teams, and to me that means that they have like high pedigrees. So Lava, who is the backup mid laner,
Right.
he played for SK Telecom as a backup. He played, which is like the number one team in Korea.
And he just started the last game for Hanwei Life. He played on April 2nd.
Yeah, and then Tempt, he was on BBQ Oliver's, who was an okay team in Korea. They're not that good though. But
Right.
he's been on Hanwha Life for a decent amount of time. Vista was actually a support, and they transitioned him to AD carry, and he's been performing pretty well. And then Kyuve and Haru, the top laner and the jungler, they've played together on several teams, on at least two teams. So that tells me that they like playing together and they have good synergy. So they've been in many more game environments than Sandbox Gaming.
Makes sense. So if we're just breaking down players in this game, we're gonna somehow make this video just as long as the 6 gamers. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's how it's done. People love it. Hey, you know what? There's always an opportunity
to talk about something.
That's right.
That's very relevant for DraftKings, and maybe it's not the reason why somebody wins like this slate.
This is the best breakdown in the business right here. How we break it down. I think it's advantageous because I'm obviously a long time DFS player at other sports, had a lot of success at it, and you've got all this great knowledge of it. I think the combination really gives a thorough breakdown of what people should look for to do.
Yeah, and so I think the one reason why I go on so many tangents and like try to give so much background information is because there is so much misinformation out there,
right?
And like hive mind mentality where in like the esports scene, there's just so much garbage that's spewed specifically by the announcers and like the shoutcasters and stuff. They basically they feel like they need to say things that the public can identify with and like agree with even if it's not correct, which is why it's just stupid.
Yeah, it is.
So
I
I
agree.
always find myself arguing against most people when it comes to esports, and it makes them think that I'm just being contrarian. But then if you took any way of like looking up what I'm talking about, I feel like most people would come out on my side.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's just crazy. But let's go to the last game.
Okay, so anything else from SBHLE? Are you going to have a ton of exposure to this game? And if so, which way are you leaning?
If I play this game, I will want Hanwha Life. I think another thing about the esports community is that they're overreactive. So if you take last night as an example, everybody was saying, "Oh, Damwon Gaming shouldn't be the favorites." Like, I agree that a Freak of Freaks had a bad matchup and that made them an interesting play.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was listening to some other people talk about it, and they were saying like, "Oh, a Freak of Freaks should definitely be the favorites in this matchup." Even though that they've had like worse recent performances, Damwon Gaming's not that good. Damwon Gaming doesn't know how to draft, and that just made me think to myself like, they're not that much better or worse than a Freak of Freaks. They're two
Right.
very similar teams. Why would I give up the recent performance? Like, it's not like one has super high talent.
Right.
So for this game specifically, I just like Hanwha Life Esports.
I'm with you on liking Hanwha Light Eve Sports, and they're a safer play. Sandbox has a sub at every single position. So anybody, if they lose the first game, anybody could be switched for anybody, right? So I think Hanwha is the safer play. Sandbox is the blue side, and like you said, the betting had swung where Sandbox is now the favorite, but it's very close.
If you're desperate to play Sandbox and you absolutely need to for some reason, like from lineup construction, I would want the 80 carry support in the team,
Right.
because those are the least likely to change.
Right. Perfect. All right. Final game. Gen G, DRX. Gen G on the blue side. Gen G is the favorite. And Gen G did defeat DRX 2-1 on the 21st of February.
Okay. So based off of talent, I think Dragon X should be the favorite. They're just they have a higher ceiling in terms of talent. So if you take a look at, and this kind of has to do with the player pools as well.
Sure.
So if you look at somebody like Chovy is going to pick a champion like Lucian in the mid lane, which is basically like having 280 carries on the map. So it concentrates what kind of damage your team is putting out, but it makes it easier for him to be self-sufficient. So Chovy can put a team on his back and win a game. Deft is one of the best 80 carries in the world, and Pyosik or Pioshik, I'm not sure exactly. I think it's probably Pioshik. He can play carry junglers as well.
And they have DRX price significantly lower than Gen G.
Yeah, so this is a situation where, let me just make sure. Yeah, I'm not sure why this is like this. Let me take a look at the standings.
That's just crazy. I mean, there's like you can get the 80 carry for Gen G ruler is 11-4 in the captain spot. Deft is 10-2. That's what we're talking about here in terms of difference. Like you can stack DRX across the board. Another thing I like about DRX is they don't have a ton of subs. Neither of these teams do. Most of the except at the mid laner you have Quad and Chovy. But Quad hasn't played for months. Other than that, and then you have Kellen and Life, which last night Kellen subbed in for Life for Gen G. So that would be the one, I guess, concern there. It's going to be impossible to know who's going to actually play. That's the last game of the slate.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, these teams there's a clear indication of who's going to play each position. But wow, the pricing is so much lower. You're getting Duran for 800 cheaper than Rascal at the top position. You're getting P06 600 cheaper than Clid and the jungler position. 1,000 cheaper for Chovy over BDD at the mid. So it's significant, the price difference.
In my opinion, good teams in general do not use subs. I think that substitutes is a stupid concept that some of these teams probably have people who look at traditional sports for guidance on like how they should be doing things, and they're like, oh well, other teams have substitutes. It gives us more opportunities to do different things. But these players are like, it's clear which player is better almost every single time.
Right.
So it's like a motivation tactic or something, which is ridiculous in esports. There's a lot of stupid like mental like pseudoscience that they use, like
Sure.
like sports science. Sports science makes sense. Yes,
Right.
you can like analyze how people react to things, but
Sure.
they like the esports teams use the bullshit version of sports science,
Right.
where it's like they're trying to proactively manipulate their players into doing something. Like sports science, I think it does a great job of explaining why something has happened in the past,
Right.
and you can try to fix that so it doesn't happen in the future. They're like going around trying to manipulate people into like changing,
Right.
like
Right.
to become something that they're not.
Right.
It's just horrible. It's just so stupid. You see it with so many of these. Like if you look at a bad team, I guarantee you they have a sports psychologist that has way too much influence on their team.
Interesting. And they are kids. These are young kids that play this game. These are young, very young people
Yeah.
that
So I
play
mean,
this game.
like if you look at G2 Perks, Perks is one of the best players he's probably the best player in Europe, and he was on an interview. He did an interview yesterday, and the people who were asking him questions are two broadcasters from Europe, and I mean they're horrible. They do a horrible job, in my opinion. The broadcasters in League of Legends, most of the broadcasters are garbage, and Europe is god awful. It's just painful to listen to, and they were asking him like, "Hey, like you're such a high performer. How do you get yourself into a mental state to like perform on such a high level?" And he kind of just gave the answer of like, I don't do that. Like I'm just naturally very competitive. I'm naturally able to play at a high level whenever I want to. And they're like, oh, but like, how do you convince yourself to want to play hard? It's like the guy doesn't like losing. How
Yeah.
difficult is it to understand
Sure.
why
Sure.
he plays well?
Right.
He's more talented than everyone else, and
Right.
he also likes winning.
Yeah.
It's like it's very
Makes
simple.
sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. So does Gen G have a significant advantage? First of all, they're the favorite, being on the blue side again over Dragon X, or is Dragon X able to counter that? Is there any sort of weird thing that could happen in this game that would force one position to not score as much as they normally would based on the draft? Just because this game is so close, these are the two best teams on the slate, right?
Yeah.
If you took these 6 teams, you'd rank these
Yeah.
2 teams 1 and 2 on the slate, right?
Yeah. Yes. So I would say drafting when you're a good team, when two good teams play each other, blue side and red side is less important. And
Okay.
I think that for LPL and LCK, I think that the sides can change within the match. A
Oh,
lot
okay.
of matches, you'll see them pick the same side 3 times in a row, but they have the option of switching back and forth. I do think that there's an advantage to being on blue side because of how it lets you pick champions, and only the really good teams can utilize red side,
Right.
which is like the way to counter the enemy team.
Right.
So you'll see there are some good broadcasters out there, like LS in Korea. He thinks about the game. He actually uses his brain to think about things, as
Sure.
opposed to most people in League of Legends. So he will like give an opinion on what team won the draft and why, and he will be very critical of teams when they make decisions that don't make any sense.
Good.
So like in this series, if Gen G has like a team composition that is exploitable in some way, I would expect Dragon X to draft to punish that.
Okay.
So in this situation, it may actually be an advantage to be on red side when two teams are playing against each other.
Interesting.
If it's a bad team and they just don't draft correctly and they start giving away the best champions, then blue side is definitely the better side. But
Right.
when you have a good coaching staff or very good players who understand how to draft,
Sure.
it's less significant.
Okay. Perfect. So from this game, favorite plays from this game, you're going to have exposure to this game, obviously, right? I would imagine. Lots of it.
Yeah, I love Dragon X, and that's going to force me to play some hedge stacks of Gen G.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
So I need to check what kind of team combinations make sense. I know for Dragon X you can pair them with anybody.
Anyone.
Yeah. And then
I think you can almost do that with most. The highest priced team on the slate is KT. They're the highest priced everywhere.
sure.
So, and now that's making me feel weird, but I like APK. I feel like if I did a Dragon X APK stack, I'll have salary for days, and I think I have good upside there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, on this kind of slate, you can pick any two teams and it's justifiable
Right.
uh, from an ownership perspective and trying to get a unique lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these teams, like I said, like comparing it to basketball again, not every NBA team is going to have 140 points at the end of a game
Right.
if they're dictating what's going on. Like if you think of the Utah Jazz,
Sure.
they're typically going to go under
Sure.
100 points. So every team in League of Legends may have a tendency to play one way, but it's not it's more about the game environment and the things that happen on the map than it is about their ability to score
Gotcha.
points. So
Gotcha.
any of these teams can go out there and have a 20-25 kill game.
Gotcha. Anything else you want to talk about on Gen G DRX, or should we just go over our favorites and get the hell out of here?
Yeah, who are your favorites?
I think for me, my favorites right now are Dragon X and APK. That's my favorite stack. I'm gonna have a lot of that. I will do the contrarian, well, not contrarian, but for me, I will hedge with some KT Gen G as well if I can afford it.
Sure.
And I'm probably just gonna avoid that. I might have a little bit of the Hanwei Gaming just because of the huge game they had the last time these teams played, so I might take a shot on that. It was the last,
Yeah.
last time, so I might have a little bit of that, but that's probably my least favorite game of the
Sure.
three.
I love Hanwha Life. I love Dragon X. And the two things that I would say is look out on Twitter for that guy's sports projections. He will post something today that explains how many points teams score in wins and losses, and it's a very helpful thing to look at because it does show the tendency of how a team plays when ahead and when behind. I think that when we get that graph from him, I think Sandbox is going to be a team that when they lose big. So that's one thing that I would want to target.
Sure.
And then one piece of advice for how to pick your lineups is every time you sit down to like figure out how much or figure out what you think about a slate, you should pick every individual game, like how you think it's going to go, and then make your lineups.
Sure.
Because
Exactly.
this way it's like, okay, I think that APK, Hanwha Life, and Dragon X are all going to win.
Right.
What lineups make sense?
Exactly.
If that's the case.
That's exactly what I do when I'm going to pick. Like if I was picking who I thought would win each game, I would be like this. I pick the winners, and then I just make that my player pool that I can pick from, and I exclude the rest of it, and then see what lineups make the most sense. That's absolutely how I approach it.
Yeah.
And
then the last thing is that I actually was working on some projections last night. I think that I have a good system for determining what Draftkings is saying about the scoring. So,
Right.
like, I have a formula that can take the salary of a team and then it incorporates a couple other things and then spits out the expected fantasy point production. And it's extremely skewed by like, is the team supposed to win or supposed to lose? Because
Yeah.
if you look at the slates when they're finished, you have players who score 10 and you have players who score 110.
Right.
And I think that I've gotten a formula to a point that I like where it can kind of give projections similar to that. And I might be able to flip it so that like you can project favorites as underdogs and stuff like that.
Well, we're
So
gonna keep working on that, and we're gonna be working on ways. We're just spitballing ideas to make that available. People, you could purchase it. However,
yeah,
so we'll have that all sorted out. DFSBachelor.com will be out soon, so that could be a place. We will see. Nothing set in stone, but we're sorting it out. Don't forget to follow League of Items on Twitter. Go to his YouTube channel. I'm writing it down right now to remember to put a link to your channel in
Sure.
the video description. If you guys would click on that, subscribe. If he gets 20 new subscribers today, I'll give someone $25 during the show tomorrow. So
Nice.
if he gets 20, so leave a comment in the comment section. Comment that you subscribe to his channel, and for those of you that comment that you subscribed, I'll pick one random person and give him away $25 on tomorrow's show. Is there an LCK slate for tomorrow?
This is you mean LCK or LEC?
Are we doing a video tomorrow on League of Legends?
I think so.
Okay.
I think there's another playoff slate.
Okay, perfect. Whenever our next slate is, I don't know the exact schedule just yet, but whenever that is, so just all you have to do is comment in the comment section that you subscribed. If that number just follows what we get in there, boom, 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 I'll give away $25 just like that.
Cool.
Anything else you want to say on this slate?
Nope. Good luck.
Everyone, thank you all so much for watching. I truly do appreciate it. May the fantasy gods be with you. Good luck tonight. Follow us on Twitter, DFS Bachelor, at League of Items. I love you all. Be safe. Be healthy. Wash your fucking hands. And try to stay home. I'm going to go brave the elements at the grocery store today, as a matter of fact. Thank you all again so much. Goodbye, folks.
See you.